6 weeks after my first baby was born, I was standing at the kitchen stove. My back was still hurting. My hands were shaking slightly from a night that had lasted longer than I had slept. The baby was in the other room. My mother-in-law was at the table. She had been there since 6 that morning, arriving before I came downstairs, moving through my kitchen the way she moved through her own. I was lifting the cast-iron pot when I heard her say something to the woman beside her. In Pennsylvania Dutch, low, not meant for me. I only understood 4 words. She's not ready. He chose poorly. I set the pot down. I did not turn around, and I understood in that moment that the 6 weeks had not been care. They had been a test. And I had just learned my score. 6 weeks after giving birth, I learned that becoming a mother was not the same as being accepted as a wife. I had thought they were here to help me. They were here to watch me, and I had not known those were 2 different things until it was too late to perform any differently. To outsiders, it looked like care. To us, it was care with a ledger. My name is Leah Byler. I grew up Old Order Amish in Holmes County, Ohio. In another story, I told you about the question that cost me my name in my community. Today, I want to tell you about a different kind of test. One that started the morning my first child came into the world. If this is your first time here, I'm Leah. I tell the stories I was never supposed to say out loud. In my community, the 6 weeks after birth had a name, weak bed. The idea was simple enough. A new mother needed to rest, to heal, to bond with her baby before she was asked to carry the full weight of the household again. The older women would come. They would cook. They would clean. They would hold the baby so the mother could sleep. To outsiders, this looked like one of the most beautiful things about Amish community life. The way everyone showed up, the way no one had to ask. And part of it was beautiful. I want to say that clearly, because it is true. But there was something else underneath it that no one said out loud. They brought food, but they watched the kitchen. They held the baby, but they watched how I held her. They washed dishes, but they watched whether dishes needed washing. Weak bed was not only rest. Weak bed was evaluation. The 6 weeks a new mother was supposed to be recovering was also the 6 weeks the women around her decided what kind of wife she was. My mother-in-law arrived at 6 in the morning, before I had come downstairs, before Daniel had finished his coffee. She had already cleaned the stove by the time I walked into the kitchen. There were 2 other women with her, her sister and an older woman from church whose opinion carried weight in a way no one ever stated directly, but everyone understood completely. They greeted me warmly. They told me to sit. They poured me coffee. They asked how the baby had slept. And while they asked, they looked at the counter. They looked at the floor. They looked at the dishes from last night that I had not yet washed. No one said anything about the dishes. That was the precision of it. The assessment happened in silence. The way all the important things in my world happened in silence. They asked, "How are we feeling today?" We? Not me and the baby. We meant the family. We meant the verdict. I did not know there was a script, so from the first week, I gave honest answers. When she asked how I was feeling, I said I was tired. Tired was weak. When she asked how Daniel was managing, I said he had been up with me at night. A husband losing sleep meant I could not manage alone. When she asked about the baby, I said she had been crying for 4 hours the night before. A crying baby meant something was wrong with the feeding, which meant something was wrong with the mother. The correct answer, the answer I did not know existed, was something like, "The Lord is good." Daniel had a hot breakfast. The baby is a blessing, a deflection, an offering. Praise for everyone, except yourself. I did not know the script. So for 3 weeks, I answered honestly. And by week 3, I noticed something shifting. The visits became shorter. The smiles became thinner. My mother-in-law started bringing her own dish rag from home. Not because she needed it, because mine, apparently, was not clean enough. She didn't say that. She didn't have to. One evening, Daniel came in from the barn and asked me, very quietly, if everything was all right between me and his mother. I said yes. He said, "She thinks you're struggling." I said I had just had a baby. He looked at the floor for a long time. Then he said, "She thinks you're not grateful." I did not know there was a script. So I gave honest answers. Honest answers were the wrong ones. Gratitude, in my world, was not a feeling. It was a performance. And for 3 weeks, the curtain had been up without anyone telling me I was on stage. The women came back on the last day of the 6th week. They brought pie. They held the baby. They told me I looked well. I had learned enough by then to say the right things. The baby is a blessing. Daniel had a hot breakfast this morning. The Lord has been good to us. I thought I had finally gotten it right. And then my mother-in-law leaned toward her sister, low voice, Pennsylvania Dutch, and said 3 words she didn't know I understood. He chose poorly. I stood at the stove with my back to them. The cast iron pot was heavy in my hands. I did not turn around, because turning around would have meant they knew I had heard. And a woman who heard that sentence and said nothing was still, technically, showing the right kind of obedience. I had failed a test I did not know I was taking. 2 years later, my second baby was born. This time, I knew the script. The Lord is good. Daniel had a hot breakfast. The baby is a blessing. I am not tired. I am not in pain. I am not scared. For the first 3 weeks, I performed it well. The women nodded. My mother-in-law's face was softer. I could feel the temperature rising, and I told myself, this time I am passing. But my body was not passing. I was bleeding more than I should have been. I was dizzy when I stood too quickly. I was nursing through a fever I had told no one about. In the 3rd week, I fainted in the kitchen. Daniel drove me to the hospital that afternoon. The women came when they heard. And I understood something, lying in that hospital room, that I had not understood before. The test was not only words. The test was whether my body could disappear politely. The first time I failed because I did not know the rules. The second time I failed because I had followed them until they made me disappear. Daniel was not cruel. He had driven me to the hospital. He had sat in the waiting room with his hat in his hands. He had looked frightened. But when we came home, he did not know how to look at me as a wounded woman. He only knew how to look at me as a wife who had failed to stay strong. I was not the only one. There was Anna, considered the model wife by everyone in our district. Calm, grateful, strong. She had passed her week bed all 3 times. The women held her up as the example of what a young wife should be. Years later, after I had left, I found out that Anna had spent 2 decades on a kind of homemade nerve tonic, herbs from her garden, taken quietly every morning during those 6 weeks. The only way she had survived 3 week beds was by chemically removing herself from her own body, the model wife, the one we were all supposed to imitate. She had passed the test by learning to feel nothing when they were watching. There was Esther, who smiled at every quilting bee, every frolic, every church gathering for years, whose eyes, when you look closely, held something I can only describe now as the expression of someone who has been waiting a very long time for something she has stopped expecting. There was Katie, whose mother-in-law came to help for 3 months after her first baby. Katie told me once, very quietly, that she had not realized the help was also instruction until the day her mother-in-law rearranged her kitchen without asking. Some women passed because they learned the script. Some passed because they stopped feeling. Some of us failed because our bodies refused to lie. Years later, in a therapist's office, I tried to describe the 6 weeks. Not the birth, not the pain, the watching. The way every meal I cooked was also a demonstration. The way every answer I gave was also evidence. The way care and evaluation had been woven together so tightly that I had never, not once, been able to tell them apart. My therapist listened for a long time. Then she said, "What you're describing is not care. It's a control mechanism wearing the costume of care." I sat with that for a while, because it named something I had been carrying for years, without being able to set it down. They were not evil women. My mother-in-law was not a cruel woman. She had been tested the same way. Her mother-in-law had sat at her table. Her kitchen had been assessed. Her answers had been weighed. She had survived it. And she had passed down what she had received the way you pass down anything you have mistaken for wisdom. They were not evil women. They were women who had survived the same test and mistaken survival for wisdom. Real care does not need a ledger. Real help does not need a verdict. A new mother does not need to prove she deserves to be tired. I have a daughter now. She will never lie in a weak bed being graded. If she has a child one day, I will not ask whether her kitchen is clean. I will not ask whether her husband had a hot breakfast. I will not count the dishes. I will sit beside her and say, "You are tired. That is allowed. You are becoming a mother. That is enough." I'm not telling you this to make you angry at the women who came with their pies and their watching. Most of them believed they were doing the right thing. The system was the problem. A system that turned the most vulnerable weeks of a woman's life into an audition and called it community. If you were ever cared for in a way that felt like being watched, I see you. If you were tired and told to perform gratitude, I see you. If your body tried to tell the truth that your words were not allowed to say, I see you. Tell me in the comments. A test you didn't know you were taking. Subscribe to Leah the Amish Girl for more stories from behind the prayer cap. And next time, I want to tell you about the morning I finally understood I had already been gone for a long time. Not the day I left, the morning, months before that, when I stopped waiting for the temperature to rise.